Imagine a world where drinking coffee could get you arrested, beaten, or even executed.
That humble little cup that fuels our mornings, sparks our creativity, and for some is practically our religion, once stirred revolutions, inflamed monarchs, and ignited bans across continents.
Believe it or not, the history of coffee is peppered with periods of prohibition, and the reasons behind these bans are as rich and complex as the drink itself.
Welcome back to The Curious Past. My name is Danny.
And I'm Shan. Today we're diving into a strange and steamy tale, the bizarre history of coffee bans, from the shadowy alleyways of 17th century Istanbul to the paranoia-soaked streets of London to the royal science experiments of Enlightenment Sweden.
Why did kings and sultans fear a drink? What was it about coffee that threatened thrones?
To understand why roasted beans so rattled rulers, we have to step inside the smoky, crowded coffee houses of history, places where ideas brewed faster than espresso.
Our first stop takes us to the opulent and powerful Ottoman Empire in the 17th century. The year is 1633 and the empire is under the reign of Sultan Murad IV. This young and notoriously authoritarian ruler viewed coffee with deep suspicion.
Coffee had arrived in the Ottoman lands in the 16th century and quickly spawned a vibrant coffeehouse culture. These weren't just places to grab a quick caffeine fix, they were social hubs, centers of conversation, where men gathered to discuss politics, poetry, and the news of the day. And for a sultan concerned with maintaining absolute power, this was a recipe for trouble.
The thing is, Murad had inherited a challenging empire. He faced rampant political instability, characterized by powerful rebellious military factions, widespread government corruption, and costly wars that were draining the imperial treasury. In this chaotic environment, these seemingly innocent gatherings were a profound threat.
As you can imagine, Murad IV was deeply paranoid. He saw these coffeehouse gatherings as breeding grounds for dissent, hotbeds of sedition where discontent could easily ferment. He feared the free exchange of ideas and the potential for opposition to his rule.
So he did what any tyrant with a temper might. He banned coffee. And not just banned it, he made drinking coffee a capital offense.
The penalties for defying the Sultan's decree were severe. Some accounts suggest that first-time offenders faced beatings, while repeat offenders could even face execution, their bodies sometimes displayed as a grim warning.
Murad's fear and belief that coffee was detrimental to his empire ran so deep that he personally enforced the ban by disguising himself and beheading those who violated it.
According to accounts, he personally patrolled Istanbul streets in disguise, wielding a broadsword and executing those caught drinking coffee.
Yet, despite the harsh measures, the love for coffee was deeply ingrained. Underground coffee gatherings persisted, fueled by whispers and the irresistible allure of the forbidden bean.
In fact, Sultan Murad IV's coffee ban in the Ottoman Empire was widely ignored and eventually became unenforceable due to widespread public demand and the impracticality of enforcement.
The ban, which included tobacco and alcohol, was part of his efforts to curb what he perceived as social decay and disorder, leading to harsh punishments for those who consumed these substances in public.
However, the ban was ultimately ineffective in the long term, as people continued to consume coffee in secret and then openly as the ban's enforcement weakened.
Fast forward to England, 1675, during the reign of King Charles II. Here too, the humble coffee bean found itself in the crosshairs of royal authority.
Charles, a monarch known as much for his elaborate wigs and love of wine as for his deep suspicion, had a burgeoning problem: coffee houses.
By the 1660s and 70s, English coffee houses were booming. They had become ubiquitous, earning the nickname penny universities, because for the price of a penny, anyone could engage in vibrant discussions and robust debates.
These were places where new ideas were fostered, public opinion was shaped, and intellectuals, merchants, and even political activists openly discussed current events.
And just like in the Ottoman Empire, this lively atmosphere sparked deep suspicion in the ruling powers. Charles, who had personally witnessed the trauma of the English Civil War and the execution of his own father, was understandably wary of any potential threats to his authority.
He and his advisors grew increasingly concerned that these open forums could be used to spread rumors, criticize his government, and even plot against him. Charles saw coffee houses as potential hotbeds of rebellion, and in response, he issued a proclamation for their outright suppression.
But Charles II's ban proved short-lived and largely ineffective. It was met with immediate and widespread public opposition. Petitions were signed, passionate arguments were made about the vital importance of these social and commercial spaces, putting the king under immense pressure.
In an astonishingly quick turn of events, just 11 days later, the proclamation was officially withdrawn. Despite the king's fears, the coffee houses ultimately continued to thrive, playing a significant and undeniable role in the intellectual and political development of England.
Our final stop on this caffeinated journey takes us to 18th century Sweden, where a rather peculiar and persistent series of attempts were made to ban coffee, not just once, but repeatedly across 3 different reigns in no less than 5 separate periods between the 1750s and the 1820s.
The origins of this royal disdain for coffee can be traced back even before King Gustav III. His father, Adolf Frederick, had already declared himself an opponent of stimulating drinks, signing the rather grandly titled Misuse and Excesses Tea and Coffee Drinking Edict in 1760.
Both father and son had been heavily influenced by a 1715 treatise from a French physician, which warned of the supposed dangers of what we now identify as caffeine in both tea and coffee.
The motivations in Sweden were multifaceted. There were economic concerns, as the government aimed to curb the outflow of silver used to pay for imported coffee, hoping instead to promote the consumption of local beverages.
So in 1746, a royal edict was issued, not quite an outright ban yet, but imposing heavy taxes. Failure to pay meant hefty fines and even the confiscation of your precious coffee cups and dishes.
But the bans grew more severe, driven by genuine, if misguided, health anxieties. King Gustav III, in particular, viewed coffee consumption as a direct threat to public health and was absolutely determined to scientifically prove its negative effects.
To this end, he ordered a scientific experiment so unusual it's been loosely referred to as the world's first randomized controlled clinical trial.
The king's subjects for this bizarre study were a pair of identical twins, both condemned to death for their crimes. Their sentences were commuted to life imprisonment on one extraordinary condition. One twin would drink 3 pots of coffee every day, and the other the same amount of tea for the rest of their lives.
The king waited. Years passed. And guess what? Well, the results certainly weren't what Gustav III had hoped for.
Firstly, Gustav was assassinated in 1792 before the experiment finished. And at the ripe old age of 83, the tea-drinking twin died first. The age of the coffee-drinking twin at his death is unknown, mainly because both doctors assigned by the king to monitor this peculiar study actually passed before him.
This rather primitive medical study utterly failed to prove that coffee was a dangerous beverage. After all, the coffee drinker outlived them all.
Despite this, the Swedish government, ever persistent, tried again to impose bans in 1794, renewing them in 1799 and 1817. But time and again, these prohibitions were met with widespread defiance, never truly succeeding in stamping out coffee drinking.
Like their counterparts in the Ottoman Empire and England, the Swedish populace was not easily dissuaded from their beloved brew.
Finally, in 1823, the last ban was lifted. From then on, coffee surged to become a dominant beverage in Sweden, transforming the nation into one of the world's highest per capita coffee consumers. Perhaps proving that some things, once loved, are simply impossible to suppress.
So, why all the panic? Why did the most powerful men in the world fear a little brown bean?
Because coffee wasn't just a drink, it was a social catalyst, a reason to gather, speak freely, question power. It sparked thoughts. And for rulers clinging to control, that was terrifying.
Coffee houses became places where ideas fermented faster than beans in a roaster. Freedom, revolution, rebellion, all started over a conversation and a cup.
From fears of rebellion in the Ottoman Empire and political sedition in England, to economic anxieties and bizarre scientific experiments in Sweden, the history of coffee is a testament to its powerful grip on societies and individuals.
The powers of the past tried to stamp out coffee, not because it harmed people, but because it awakened them.
And yet, coffee endured. It steamed through censorship, outlived monarchs, and today, it fuels revolutions of thought across laptops and latte shops worldwide.
So the next time you sip your morning brew, remember, you're drinking a beverage that once terrified empires.
Thanks for watching The Curious Past. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and drop your thoughts in the comments section below.
And if you want to hear more similar stories, don't forget to subscribe for more strange sips of history.
Until next time, stay curious.